I called the director and I told him I was going to have to drop out because of this situation. I was in a neck brace and a back brace, and this character, I can't really play this character. And he goes, well, why can't your character have a neck brace and a back brace? And I was like, okay, it's very nice and accommodating. Like, I appreciate that. But for me, it was like that defining moment of being like, oh, I don't have to wait for someone to give me the opportunity to do what I love. I can actually create that opportunity myself.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Inside the Business, folks. I'm your host, The Michael, and calling in all the way from Los Angeles, we've got a very special guest. Ashton Swinford has done it all. She's a writer, director, producer, actor, comedian. She's produced for everyone's favorite comedy news outlet, The Onion. You've definitely seen her on Fox's hit show, New Girl. And her upcoming movie, Wizdom, promises to show off her writing, producing, and acting chops all at once. Ashton, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. This is awesome.
Absolutely. No, it's great because, we haven't seen each other in like 6 years now. Context for the audience at home, we came up sort of as PAs and production professionals in the Midwest down in Chicago. And it's been a hot minute. The first job that we worked on was a Lexus commercial. Our call time was like 3 a.m., showing up not even bright and early long before the sun. And those days, we were grinding it out and having fun and just working our asses off. And now we've come to the point where you're just making movies on your own, lady. Like, tell me about that. How's that going?
It's good. You got to start somewhere. And I think we started as film babies. And there was many times in my career where I had to go back to PAing to kind of get back up the ladder career wise. And I feel like everybody should do that and have no shame in doing that, because it teaches you to learn how to filmmake on somebody else's dime, so that when you do go to make your own project, you make less mistakes. You learn from the mistakes they made. You learn what they did really well and what made a cohesive team. All of that, you get to take a back seat and just witness as you're being a PA on these productions. And then, of course, as you get up higher in your career field and you get more responsibility, you don't get to take that much of a back seat. Like, when I worked on Southside on HBO Max, I was a production coordinator, so I'm managing a lot of things on that side. So it's great to PA so that you can really absorb more, because the thicker you get into it, the more you are in the weeds.
Yeah, well, I sort of tell everyone who's starting out that, I have this thing where I don't really trust like people who go straight into specializing on a film set, right? Whether it's a producer, a director, an AC, they can be super talented, right? But people who come up as PAs, you're getting thrown just into the trenches. You're experiencing production from all angles. You're seeing every single department at work. You're assisting all of them at any given time. Yeah, you're probably a gopher here and there. Yeah, you're, grabbing coffees and doing lockups to make sure that people aren't crossing into the shot. And you're running release forms to people walking down Upper Wacker who don't want to be bothered while they're on their way to work, right? It's a thankless, chaotic job, but I genuinely miss it. I genuinely miss it sometimes, because that was the time in my life where I was most open to new information and developing new skills. And as a producer and a director, do you feel like you are a better creative leader for understanding what a PA goes through?
Absolutely. And I think also today the culture of sets is changing dramatically. So even when you and I were PAing, there was still very much, there's still very much this idea that you have to haze PAs and, that old school, make them do the worst things, even though there is somebody on set who needs to do all those things. And I think it's really good for any person to be humble enough to, now as a producer, I wouldn't give a PA a job I wouldn't do myself. And if we're low on hands, I'm jumping in on helping the PAs. And that goes so much farther than just me standing or sitting in a director's chair barking orders, because it really is a team sport and we're really in the trenches together. And if you can support the lowest member of your team and the highest member of your team, you're going to have such a much more cohesive set experience and family environment for that to go through, that people will work twice as hard for you, because they are passionate about it, because they see that you see them. and you appreciate them. And I always try to take some time to like ask my PAs, what do you want to do in slow moments, and like, get an idea of like what position they want to grow into, or what interests them about film, so that I can, keep out an ear open for opportunities for them the same way somebody did that for me when I was a PA.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing to touch on, right? Is that PA is a job, but it's not people's dream, right? Like it is the starting position for a lot of folks, especially those who didn't have the privilege of growing up with a camera, strapped to their hands, or, who didn't have inherent writing chops or directing chops, or loved movies but didn't really know how they got made, but, somehow found their way onto a set, right? And these are people who have bigger dreams, like, right? Like I went into the industry knowing that I was a writer and a director, right? Like you came up with a latent amount of talent that you were aspiring to for your career, right? And I guess, PAs can get stuck, right? Like I know so many PAs, I'm sure you know so many PAs that they're grinding it out, they're hustling in the bigger markets and even the smaller ones, and they get used to the workflow that they know, and everyone loves a seasoned, experienced, capable PA, right? Everyone loves one, and it's kind of hard to give that up to make room for newbies who have to get trained and learn the ropes all over again, right? So I guess for me, growing out of being a PA was as simple as saying, I'm not a PA, and then sort of like lying about my experiences a little bit, just a little bit of lying to convince PMs to put me in different positions that I already knew that I could do. I'm not saying that's what people should do, but from your perspective, like what do you think PAs need to know about leveling up? What are some steps that, PAs who find themselves feeling stuck can do to grow into their larger dreams, whether it's creative leadership or bigger crew positions?
So yeah, I think the same thing is happening with career extras as is happening with career PAs, in regards to it's very easy to get comfortable in that position. It's already a chaotic environment. Filmmaking is chaos. It's, at least I know my chaos is going to be somewhere in this boundaries, right? So that becomes my safe space, I don't want to get out of it, my safe blanket, to take any more risks that I might fail at. But I would say, it's not a career field that is sustainable financially for a long term. So it does require growth if you do want to sustain yourself in this industry. I think a lot of the things about our industry have to make it more sustainable because the hours are long, because the work is so hard. And once you start to specialize, you are going to be working as hard, but it'll be in this specific thing. And somebody else can help you do the heavy lifting that you were once in that role. So I would suggest, if you are a PA and you are feeling stuck in your role, to talk to your manager, to talk to your production manager, producer if you can, and even just try to specialize. Because when we have a team of 10 PAs, or, when we did the Lexus commercial, we probably had 50 PAs doing lockups. And a lockup PA is very different than, the producer's PA or the director's PA. So they're very different roles. So I think I would mostly just try to talk to whoever's in charge of assigning the PAs to specific roles, and try to say, hey, can I focus on camera? Can I focus on director or office? Or, because I know the office PA is totally not sexy, but that is the step before becoming a producer. So a lot of people don't realize that. It's like they see, oh, just copying paperwork, but really you're actually learning the entire financial and legal process for making the production. So it's a huge asset. Even though you're still a PA, you're specializing in that category, and eventually you'll move up over time.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the office PAs who know more about production paperwork than I ever will as a producer. Not to tell on myself, but yeah, no, everyone's constantly grinding it out. And you were saying that it's not dissimilar to the actor's journey. And, I mean, we met as PAs and we've collaborated as creatives. I'm curious, and just want to sort of fill in the audience a little bit on your background. So what came first for you? Was it crewing and being on sets, or were you like hustling as an actor beforehand? Like, I don't know too much about your origin story, actually.
Yeah. Okay, crazy. Yeah, I've been an actor since I was 6 years old, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I started in New York City, where I'm from. I did a lot of like off Broadway theater productions. I did some modeling as a kid. And then I really kind of found my voice in film and TV because I was so excited to have something that was timeless, that was a little bit more permanent than the impermanence of theater. Like theater's so great, you work so hard to do this one performance, and you do get that real world feedback of people coming up to you after the show or clapping or whatever, which is great as an actor. But at the same time, it's just in that room with those people, and then it never happens again. So being part of film and TV really attracted me because it was like I could do one day of filming and I have it forever, and I can be part of this great story that, is now the way our community and our culture communicates with each other. It's like, it's that idea of whether or not film and TV creates culture or culture creates film and TV. But, being a part of that larger conversation was always more attractive to me. And so I came out to LA originally as an actor and just tried to be in other people's productions. That's how I booked New Girl and a couple other things. And I actually had this is kind of a crazy story, but I started working in production after I got into a really bad car accident. I actually was hit by a drunk driver on my way to perform at the Comedy Store here in LA. I was doing Roast Battle, if you're familiar with that
Yes,
show.
of course.
Uh, and I, forfeited my roast because I was in the back of an ambulance with a broken spine. So it was like a real corner turn of my career because my entire life depended on my physical abilities. Being my day job at the time was I was a circus performer doing aerial and fire. My night job was doing stand up, which I barely got paid for. And, every now and then I would do commercials or acting jobs to pay the bills, but none of those things I could do with a broken spine. So it was like, what do I do? It's this like crisis of, I've worked all my life on this one bucket. I haven't filled any other buckets. So I happened to be in a movie at the time. Actually, it was a pilot. And I called the director and I told him I was going to have to drop out because of this situation. I was in a neck brace and a back brace. And luckily, I'm fully recovered now, thank God. But I said, I'm going to have to drop out of the film. This character, I can't really play this character. And he goes, well, why can't your character have a neck brace and a back brace? And I was like, okay, it's very nice and accommodating. Like, I appreciate that. And then he was like, well, we talked a lot more about like how I was feeling. And he was like, why don't you just also help us? We need an associate producer on this. Would you be open to like sending some emails and, getting people to sign some paperwork, just like little things that would really greatly help us, that would also help educate you as to the other side of it, that things that you can do without your body, and he said we have a great producer on board. Her name is Alicia Haywood. She's a former producer for Oprah. Amazing woman, amazing producer. And so she just was so grateful for the help that she really taught me everything. And she really showed me this other side of the industry that was so much more empowering than just being on the pick me side, and like there's a part in this industry for everybody. It takes such huge teams and it takes such amount of talent to make anything happen. But for me, it was like that defining moment of being like, I don't have to wait for someone to give me the opportunity to do what I love. I can actually create that opportunity myself. And granted, I took like 3 years to go work for The Onion and all these other productions to like really learn how to produce, and like stopped being on camera for that time. Although I was on The Onion TV show as like on camera talent too, but it was more off camera focused, which is how I met you, was like going back into the commercial industry after The Onion. So like I was already a producer and I had to go back to PAing when I met you. That was like the humbling nature of it. It's like, we're always starting over. Like this industry is all about upsets. It's all about killing your darlings. It's all about like, I've had so many heartbreaks on my own productions of like it falling apart either right before filming or even like during filming or things like that, where it's like you get all your hopes up and it goes away. And it's this labor of love, but it does come with this. If you are able to contribute in that forward progress of your productions, you don't have to sit back and just wait for somebody to pick you or choose you or fund your project. You can actually start to make the steps to go out and bring that project to life.
Man, I mean, that's a tale as old as time, though, right? Like the story of I put all my eggs in this basket because you have to, right? Like every project has to be a labor of love. If you want to succeed in this industry, it's not for hobbyists, right? Like you can't, it might be your side hustle, it might be what your friends and family consider your hobby, but deep down, anyone who's serious about this stuff knows that this is your real love, right? Like this is what you're married to. This is what you have to care about. I remember, I mean, I'm not going to make this podcast about me, Ashton, but just to relate a little bit, like I remember I was working with Christy Gescheidler, who, you know, we work together with as a producer, and she's coordinating down in Chicago. Shout out, Christy, come on the show. And we were developing a script together that got into a bunch of festivals. It was a huge success. We went to an HBO sponsored event out in Minnesota, of all places. But we went despite knowing full well. So the week prior to this festival, we were up for Best Original TV Pilot Script, right? And that was like a big deal for us, especially because it included a meeting with several agencies that were going to be sending representatives to the festival. And that was a huge thing for me because I'd never gotten a seat at the table before like that. Mm-hmm. And the week before, Christy calls me and she goes, "Hey, so fun story. Steven Spielberg and Seth Rogen are going to be in Chicago and they're looking for assistants and we're being asked if we want to be in their camp." And I'm like, I mean, yeah, duh, obviously, of course I want that. When? And she goes, "It starts when we're going to be in Minnesota. So we have to pick one or the other." So here I am, you know, I'm 27, 28 at the time, and I have to pick between working with two of the biggest names in Hollywood as an assistant, or I have to go represent my own project and hope that it gets picked up and represent my own creativity so that I can be one of their peers instead of their assistant, right? And of course, artistic ego and hubris says I have to go represent my project. So we went and we lost. And then you look back and it's like, oh, I'm kicking myself. But, you know, you can't change the past and you got to move forward and do that stuff. But the point is that, like, you have to do that stuff. You have to love it to death, like literally to death. Whether it fails, and it's going to fail. Like statistically, it's going to fail, right? This is an industry of failures. The success stories are all anyone ever sees, but it's like that iceberg effect, right? Like the successes are just like that tip of the iceberg, and everything beneath that, the 90%, is all dead productions. I mean, let's just talk about pilot season, right? Like how many shows never make it to air, right? It's insane. So you have to love it to death. But I want to go back because I had no fucking idea that you had a broken spine, and here I was as a director asking you to dance for me in a music video, moving around, and you're doing aerial acrobatics and shit. Like you're just like full blown entertainment hustle, but like super physical. And then you're dealing with that, and you go into production. That's insane to me. So was that before or after New Girl?
It was after New Girl. It was very like a life defining moment of like, I did feel very much like fate had swept in because I'd always wanted to be a filmmaker. I just didn't know how to make that leap from on the other side of the camera. So it was just like the universe opened up in this opportunity and it just felt right. But like, I do want to applaud you for, just to go back for your story of like, you would have regretted that forever had you not taken the
A
opportunity
thousand
to
percent.
vouch for yourself.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think there's also a thing out here in LA where there's a ton of celebrity chasers, and of course, being around them and having them attached to your project does create opportunities, but it doesn't get you the same type of clout that promoting and creating your own content independent of those help does for you. Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong way. There's so many avenues to gaining success or gaining funding or distribution or whatever it is that you're looking for. So I don't want to poo-poo any one way. And obviously, I'm still figuring it out. We're still figuring out distribution for our projects and trying to get them made. So, but the landscape is changing. There are more opportunities, I feel like, for more inclusive sets, more interesting stories. We know that the tried and true stuff isn't necessarily hitting the same way it used to. So people are looking for something a little bit different. I keep pointing to like The Penguin, which I'm super obsessed with. I don't know if you've watched that, but like talk about reinventing the wheel. Like they've done that I think is the direction that we're all going to be heading, and is doing a brand new spin on the old. And that's going to take new talent. So it's tough right now because I think our industry does like to give the jobs to the people who know how to drive the Ferrari. Like I'm not, as a studio, I'm not going to give you the keys to the Ferrari if I haven't seen you drive it,
Right.
because it's a lot of money. But at the same time, if I'm looking for new, fresh ideas, I do need to take some more risks. And so I think it's going to be lower priced feature films and TV shows. And obviously AI will probably be a big component in the editing process, or post or VFX, which will also make it cheaper. But yeah, hopefully more creators will be getting their own projects. And that's why the incubators are really great projects. The Screen Labs, like all of those programs are a really great way to get distributors and studios comfortable with new talent. And especially if they have that mark of approval from that program or whatever, it makes the studios a lot more sure about investing in them.
Yeah, and I think we're living in this sort of like golden age of independent production where, back in the day, if I wanted to do a proof of concept, and I say back in the day being like 10, 15 years ago, when I'm in film school and shit, if I want to make a proof of concept, I really am restricted by my access to crew, equipment, locations, etc. And now technology is getting us to a place where people with limited resources, who can't afford cinema cameras, who can't afford experienced DPs or ADs to manage their projects with and for them, people who are just really like guerrilla style going out there writing scripts without even understanding like proper formatting and shit. They're just making the thing because they have an idea and they know that they love this project. And now we have these technologies that allow them to sort of more clearly articulate those visions. Like they're never going to be, well, not never. AI is going to do a lot of stuff for these people, but, they are going to be able to show those proofs of concept for what they really are and can be, so that studios can go, oh, yeah, I see exactly what you mean. We can definitely help you make this bigger and better, without having to bust their asses, spending months, if not years of their life, creating pitch materials that they can otherwise just show off in a proof of concept, in a 30-second, minute-long, 10-minute-long video, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, people want to know what they're getting, and the clearest way to articulate that is by showing them a piece of the final product, right? Like,
Right,
that's key.
right. And I do think that AI can help with that, but I will say in like projects like we shot Wizdom, our sci-fi project, as a proof of concept for the feature film. And so that we could show studios what we can do to have a very high production value with very low budget. So that's not something I would be able to show them if I made an AI video, because they wouldn't have trusted to see that I can run a set, that I can run a set of 100 people, that we can produce quality content, that we don't need big names to do so. We shot it in Chicago and, took a loan on the tax credit through CMA. So all of those things I get to prove by showing this short film that we made, that I think AI will help with the storytelling component. Like, I think regardless of what happens with AI, story is always going to be king.
Sure.
I think it might be like, I know a lot of people are using it to like prompt them for scripts, but like I don't think that's gonna end up the way that we're going, because it's what connects with people is the human element, and that the twist that something's new. And so what AI is doing is mimicry. So I think we're better off following those first time filmmakers who have a brand new perspective of how something should be done, paired with, a seasoned vet who knows how to run a set. But like that, I think is more in line with creating good new content than just creating a great look and feel. But I will say, on the other side of that, again, no right answers. We like to say in this industry, decks equal checks. So the better your deck, the bigger the check. So first and foremost, make sure your pitch deck is super engaging. It's very visual. Your ideas are very clear. And then if you have a video to follow that up, even better. But I know for us, we got our proof of concept funded entirely off of our pitch deck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And I mean, I've been making pitch decks forever, and even with a great one, success is not assured, right? But like the more tools you have, the more collaborators you have to help you turn that into like a really marketable piece of material. I mean, yeah, decks equals checks. That's fantastic, and it's easy to remember because it rhymes, folks. I want to circle back really quick to your journey as an actor, because this is a huge thing that I don't think a lot of people would recognize just at face value. But New Girl is one of the biggest shows to exist in modern history, and it's got a huge fan base resurfacing thanks to Netflix and Hulu. And that's colossal. It's my personal favorite show of all time. And like, we all have like actor friends who are hustling nonstop. And this kind of like, this goes into the PA thing. This is part of the acting thing. This is part of the journey of ups and downs, right? But like, life is a series of moments and stories, and we rise, we fall, we get back up again. And your journey is a fascinating one. It's all over the place. You've been up, you've been down, you've broken your back, you've come back stronger than ever. But the first place I ever saw you before we even started working together was on New Girl. And that's colossal. But a lot of people might not recognize you because you are at the very head of the show. And this is something that I want to talk about specifically because, when I was growing up, my mentality about art and my role in the arts was that, if I could make an impact of any kind that was positive on the arts community, on the audience, it didn't matter how many times it happened. If it happened one time, then I had succeeded, right? I had made my mark and I had done something of value for myself and for my legacy and for the world, right? Very romantic idea, a little ignorant, but cute and fun and super important. Like, you got to hold on to those feelings because that's what keeps us in love and engaged with these projects and with the work that we do, right? Absolutely. But your character, Rochelle, shows up as the inciting incident for one of the biggest shows. Like, for fans of the show, Jessica Day, played by Zooey Deschanel, leaves her old living situation to move into a loft with 3 wackadoodle boys and starts her journey that becomes the rest of the show, right? But the reason why she moves is because her boyfriend is engaged in an extracurricular romantic activity with your character, right? Like, you are the reason why Jess leaves her old situation and moves into loft with the guys. To me, that is a massive role in a very small package that sets off, it's the starting gun for the entire show that so many people love. And I just wanted to pick your brain about, like, when you reflect on that, how does it feel in relation to the rest of your career? You don't want to define yourself by any one thing, obviously, but like, how does that feel for you? Does it remind you like why you're in this? Do you use it as sort of like a benchmark for other things? Like, you played no small part in one of the biggest shows in television history. And I just wanted to know, like, as an actor, as a creative, like, how does that relate to the rest of your career?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was so grateful to have that opportunity. It was very early in my TV and film career, and it was a struggle. Actually, they made me audition for episode 2. They didn't know if I could do the comedy bit of singing in the backseat of her car because I was cast based on a look for the episode 1. So I had to defend my role. I had to come back and audition again for the same part. They almost replaced me. So that was a little terrifying. It's just like knowing that, you're never really secure, especially when things are in a pilot form. So like, I remember I'm still good friends with like Lamorne and all of them. And I remember the first day of filming and it was the pilot. And so they didn't know if it was getting picked up and they were all super nervous. And like, I wasn't nervous because I was just a day player. And I was so happy to be there. They were all so quiet. And then just to watch them bloom into like huge, massive stars. I mean, Zoe was already a star, but like the rest of them just to kind of coming into their own from day one, just being super nervous was just like such a blessing to see. And like, obviously they couldn't bring my character back because she was like the evil one that, made Zoe the new girl essentially.
Yeah.
So like, but yeah, it was tough for me for a while because that was really like my biggest credit for a very long time. And I was like very afraid I was going to be defined by just that one role. And I did get cast a lot in the like girl who steals your boyfriend or the bitch next door, like that kind of type of role for a while. But I was so grateful to have that big set experience and so grateful to have worked with Zoe Deschanel, who was so kind. Like she is the character that she portrays on that show. That's kind of who she really is. Like she is that quirky, lovable person. And she was so kind, even to all the actors who were so nervous. Like it just really set a great tone of like, yeah, I do want to do comedy. It is fun. You get to laugh. You get to play with your friends and get paid for it. Like that's when I really learned that I wanted to specialize in doing comedy. Because before that, I'd done tons of drama. You do the scene where you watch your mom die 16 times and you're bawling. And, as an actor, it takes a really big toll on your body to keep doing that. And I know I would be getting sick after big dramatic roles and movies would wrap. There was one movie where I had to play a schizophrenic and I swear to God, I started like seeing things by the end of the production. I was like, time out.
You got lost in the sauce, Ashton. You committed too hard.
A little too method. But yeah, it was so nice to be able to see what was possible at a big scale and that it could be fun and that it could be an enjoyable process and that these people, it is that improv environment, even if it is fully scripted, they did a great job of doing the scenes as scripted and then letting everyone play, which I thought was a really great move and which I still do in my filmmaking now. Do it as is. Now let's throw it away if we have time to do a wild take. Because you find some great stuff there once you know the characters, once you know the motivation. But just getting to watch them interact and have fun and be like, oh, what about this? Oh, what about, oh. And that just made me fall in love with doing comedy as a career, which took me to The Onion, which took me to HBO Southside, which took me to my own projects now. So I'm very grateful for that left turn that I wouldn't have had I not had the experience of doing that role, which at the end of the day was a very small part. So
yeah, but there are no small roles. That's what they say, right? When were you at The Onion? Because I know you did the job, but our paths have crossed silently in the night several times. When were you there?
I was at The Onion in 2017 for season 1 of the AV Club hosted by John Tatey. So it was a celebrity talk show, variety show, late night, when we were owned by Univision, when The Onion was owned by Univision for a short time. And it was a brand new channel that Univision made for us called Fusion. It wasn't long lasting. They shut down the channel after a year. So then our project went to Amazon Prime, which was great, but it was timely. It was about today's news. So it was really hard to translate it into an evergreen type of
Sure.
situation because it was very political. It was very about culture right now.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun to make because it was high stakes. It was live to tape. We'd film all week and deliver on Friday. And that was like our schedule over and over and over again. And we made 30 episodes, 30-minute episodes with cold opens
Yeah.
and all kinds of celebrity guests. I got to pre-interview all kinds of people. Like Aubrey Plaza, she's like, was one of our guests and was such a dream. Also very funny about Aubrey Plaza. she, she's so sweet. Like I had the best pre-interview with her on the phone, and she's so talkative and she was lovely. And then she gets on stage or she gets on set with our host and she's like in total character. Like she is on Parks and Rec and she's giving one word answers. And my poor host is like flailing, but it's her. That's her. You have to know that about her when you interview her, that she's going to try to, anyway, I love that about her. It's like, you didn't know what you were getting, but you knew you were getting April.
Sure,
Like
sure.
it was fun.
Well, it's branding
yeah.
too, right? Like she's, maintaining the image that was relevant at the time that the, public knew her as. So that's, something that you see a lot, right? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that plays into, you talk about Zoe being on New Girl and bringing so much of herself into the character of Jess, right? And I have experience with Adult Swim working for Joe Pera Talks with You. And Joe himself is very much the same way. Like the director, Marty, will tell you that he's completely different people between his character and Joe Pera, the comedian and human being. But everyone else is like, he's just really committed to this role, right? Like he's just staying in character all the time. And that's something that so many people don't always realize. I mean, you hear things about like method actors like Daniel Day-Lewis who like stay in character no matter what, right? But more often than not, in my experience as a director, I find that actors who can bring more of themselves or elements of themselves into a character are more likely to create a strong one, right? Because I mean, acting is, drawing from within in a big way. If you're trying to invent emotions that you don't have experience with, I mean, you absolutely can. That's part of the magic of acting. But I mean, the authenticity of just bringing yourself into the role is such a huge part of the experience, right? And
Absolutely.
I want to get into like Wizdom a little bit here because this is a big project for you and you're, writer, producer, and star. And just out of curiosity, like with your character in this movie, what elements of yourself are you bringing in? What are you making up as you go along? Like, what has that process been like for you? And, jumping off of that, let's get into Wizdom. Like, I want to know about this project. But yeah, from the acting experience, like, what are you bringing from Ashton Swinford into your character for Wizdom?
Yeah, I think something that I learned at The Onion that I'm probably always going to take with me is the art of satire. And I think that even if it's not a fully comedic piece like Wizdom is, we are doing a satire on the healthcare industry and on this new evolution of brain chips and what our world would be like once that's out. And then now following these anti-heroes within that the context of that satire. So that to me, I think is something I always bring writing and style wise is like, yes, it's me in that scenario, but it's also me if like the world right now was turned up to a level that was way too loud, what would it be like? And that's how we can start to point at the satirical nature of what's happening right now by making it about something else, by making it about this future that doesn't necessarily exist. It's make believe, you guys, relax, but we're actually talking about real things.
Yeah, of course.
And comedy and satire has a crazy way of being able to do that because you laugh at something and you're like, wait a minute, why is that funny? Wait, that's messed up, So like that's kind of what we're going for. And I think with on the acting side, I had the character I play, Eos. So basically, the story is about in 100 years from now, when we're so addicted to our phones that we're ripping out our own eyes and we're throwing our phones in them instead, because we're so reliant on technology, and humanity becomes disgusting. We're over it, right? It's like, what is our humanity in that situation? So we kind of follow, it's a cyberpunk sci-fi film that follows these two siblings that aren't blood related, because we, in the future, when we can biologically print life, what does family mean? What? And now in societies where we have so many divorced parents, like, I know I have a dad that's not really my dad. Like, I have family members that I consider family members that we're not blood related. So it's the idea of what family is in the future, but also all these ideas of what drugs are. Like, if we are bionic, we need drugs to keep the bionics from being rejected, but also the other side, people are taking drugs to escape the reality of their life. Which drug is better? Like, it's really that question of, like, is the healthcare industry that's feeding you drugs? I mean, obviously it's based in science. We're not saying that we don't believe in science or the healthcare industry. We just see the problems that it puts profit before people's needs, that can get worse as time goes on and as the money and the stakes get higher. So what happens when you can't afford healthcare? Am I going to let you die? What happens when I need human test subjects? Am I going to print them? It's like, what is this future that we're all heading towards? And what are these moral dilemmas that we're going to need to be facing within the next 10, 20 years even? And how can we showcase that in a fun, cool, sexy movie that's about this journey of, what it is to be a clone, what it is to be bionic, what it is to exist in a society that it's only built for the rich. So yeah, that's what's super fun about our project. And it's obviously very stylized. We have that, like, super cool neon stylized look, because in our world, there's no more daylight. So that's really fun. But yeah, we're really excited to see where it goes. And, like, yeah, logline wise, in the future where daylight is scarce, humans live with bionic implants in a colony called Wizdom. And Eos and their younger sibling Vale are thieves in this world, and they get by cooking drugs that unlock extrasensory abilities and eventually time travel.
I
So
mean,
it's a fun story.
that's fascinating. I mean, I love that. That's wild. That sounds like a super dense premise and setup. And I've seen some of the footage and photos that you guys have posted on your socials. The visuals are spectacular. So shout out to your team and everyone who's handling that stuff. I guess I'm curious, how did this project get started? Because this is very much like an independent endeavor. I mean, you talked a little bit about, like, the pitch deck and how you were utilizing the tax funds in Chicago. And I think this is a gray area for so many aspiring creatives, especially now that we are living in kind of like a content creators forward market, right?
Yes.
And the orthodox information about how productions on a feature and union scale sort of are falling by the wayside for a lot of, like, people who are very talented and very skilled and working towards these bigger projects, but ultimately have no fucking idea how to start and, get money or make a movie happen, outside of just making it themselves with whatever sticks and leaves they can find in the woods, right? So how did this project get started? What was, like, building the team like, and how did you guys get to where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll zoom out by saying it really started with producer Alicia Haywood teaching me that whoever controls the money controls the power on a set, because then you get to make the decisions of who you get to hire, what vendors you use, how you things get cast. I mean, you don't get all the creative decisions, but you at least get to support the people that have the same vision to create more diverse sets, to hire the types of people you want to work with, and even the vendors that you want to work with. Like if I'm, line producing, I'm going to go to a local mom and pop to cater our lunch, not a big catering company, because I prefer to put that money back into the community where I'm filming, not just to some corporate Subway or whatever, so that I think taught me a lot. So again, I would suggest be an office PA wherever you can, see the paperwork, see the back end of other productions, see how much money it takes to really make these things happen. And a lot of the commercials are union, so that scale is even higher. So it's also learning what is that threshold that is not necessary, that people will work for and be excited to work for monetarily. That's also not going to break your bank. That's also not being exploitative of people. I don't want to charge, like, if their production charge is too low, I don't want to work on it, because I don't want those people to resent me later. It's hard work. And I don't think that should be encouraged either. I do know some filmmakers, I will not say names, that are just, will say, oh, the credit, oh, here's a couple bucks, or, no, we don't need that anymore. This society is expensive. We all have bills. We all have value. And even if you're learning something, like, we will always ask for volunteers if people want to learn on set, but I will never require them to do anything other than just show up and learn, and then ask them if they want to participate. There are some great teaching set moments that I think is awesome. But yeah, anyway, long story short is I'm saying, get a look at the behind the scenes on another production, see how the money flows. That is the biggest hurdle that no one tells you, is this money is always very secretive, and for good reason. There's an agency fee, there's the director makes a lot of money, and everyone, and the PAs make such little money. And if they saw it all, they would get upset. So there's a reason the budget is kept very hush hush. And if you are able to look behind the curtain and see that budget, or, shadow a producer, ask them there's some productions that will publish their materials too, that you can share, that you can look at. But whatever it is, that I think is the one thing that is the key to helping you figure out how to make yours. So when we started with the pitch deck, and we had a great pitch deck. We had a short film script ready to go. It was like much longer, and we ended up having to cut it down so much to what we could actually afford to shoot by the end of it.
Sure.
We had like a CGI cat we had to cut after filming because we couldn't afford to do it. There was like so many things that we wanted to do that we just couldn't afford to do. And we were really ballsy in the fact that we went ahead and started filming even though we didn't have the money for post-production, because I trusted that I could shop the footage, because we, got the best cameras, got the best DP, got the best everything that we could possibly afford, that I knew at least the raw footage would look good enough that I could take that to raise more money if I needed to.
Sure.
So it was a risk, and it's always a risk. And again, we had to take out a loan on the tax credit. So basically, show my budget. This company, CMA, Chicago Media Angels, gave us a loan on that 30% tax credit so that we could spend it beforehand on production. So I do owe them a lot of money. But that's the nature of indie filmmaking. It's like, I have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. It's that kind of concept, is like, you do whatever you have to do at this level. We are scrappy, we are guerrilla, and it does happen to be with budget too. So, I did have to go to each one of my key players on the team, like my DP and my director and everyone else, and just say, this is the rate that we have all in. Are you willing to do it? If not, I can try to find a little more, but like, that's all we got. And it was really about trying to find people who were invested in the long run of it. Like Leigh Marie Williams is the director. She's been on board since day one, like helping get the script together, mostly giving notes and stuff like that, and helping fundraise. And then our, production designer, Jamie Primer, was such a huge, important asset to us in building this world, because, she's a big production designer in her own right. but we found, it was the perfect opportunity for her to stretch her wings, and we had just enough money to hire her, and she made like our little budget stretch so far to look incredible. So things like that, it's like, where to spend it. We knew to spend it on our DP and his camera equipment because we got a second camera. So we're shooting double the footage and the coverage at the same time. So we're making more content per day. Our schedule is very, so it's making decisions like that makes the money stretch just a bit further to get you what you want. And that's sometimes either something you can learn from other people's mistakes or your own mistakes. Like I will tell you, at the beginning of my career, when I first started making films, they were so inefficient. My first film was a music video. I'm pretty sure we didn't even finish it. Like we were shooting in the desert and we got there too late, and all the performers, hair and makeup, and the lights started falling. And it was just like, you have to make mistakes first and do it on a smaller scale, and then just never give up. And every time it's a different scale. Every time you're stepping up a little bit. Like this is probably my third or fourth project I've tried to get off the ground and funded. So it really is never giving up and being humble enough to learn from your mistakes and know that you don't know everything. And the industry is also changing. So the people at the top, the people that have been there forever, yeah, they have a good idea of how it was, but it's also shaping to become something new. And what is that? And we're the authors of that.
Yeah. And I mean, you've worn so many hats. So like you are uniquely qualified to speak on all this stuff, because a lot of people in our industry really do like specialize and they only sort of know their corner of the business, right? But folks who have done the production hustle, who have done PA work, who have seen everything from different angles. Like, I mean, you have done that plus the performance side of things, right? So like you really do have an understanding of all of this stuff, and you still have these ups and downs, and it's still a struggle. So like I think the thing to get across to the audience here and everyone who's listening, because people get discouraged and they're like, oh, I'm going to try this for one more year, and if something doesn't break for me, I'm out. It's like, you got to keep learning. You got to keep going. It's, if you love it, obviously. But even the people who have tons of experience and have been on colossal shows still struggle to make their break happen, right? Or to even just get like, you may have had a break and now you have another project that you still have to force through the works, right? Like no one's going to do it for you, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to muscle through, and I think you guys are doing a spectacular job of that. And I guess my question, speaking to like wearing multiple hats, right? Because for this project especially, I mean, I have for passion projects had to play the role of producer, director, AD, writer, scripty, all at once, right? And that's exhausting because the more jobs you have to focus on, something sort of gets lost in translation in the other roles, right? You can't have your priorities on everything all at once, right? But
yes.
For you, especially like, I guess, in relation to Wizdom, which role, what hat was the heaviest, right? Like where did you put more of your eggs? Because you're acting in this thing, you're producing it, you're writing. Like, what was the best part of that for you? Which role was your favorite?
Well, biggest hat and best are, I think, two different aspects.
Of course.
I was very lucky because I have a great community of people in Chicago that I trust, that include producer Grace Hahn and I'm Etienne, who's also an amazing producer and production manager in their own right. So for me, the biggest hat was line producer, was doing the business side, getting all the investments, getting the investment waterfall set up with my lawyer, establishing the LLC, getting the loan paperwork, all of the line producer duties for managing the finance.
That's a lot.
Has been and will continue to be, is continuing to be, because we're still submitting the tax credit, the biggest part of the job.
Of course.
So again, having someone who really understands the finances attached to the project is going to be huge for your success. So just making sure that gets managed. Like, I don't pay myself to do that role, but I would have to if I couldn't do it myself, and that would not be sustainable for me. But I will say the most I was lucky enough, and I planned production because I had worn so many hats before, to know that there's a certain point I'm going to hand it off to Grace and Imy and trust them to do the actual producing so that I can just focus on being an actor. Because the having directed and acted in some of my own stuff before, the jumping back and forth made both roles suffer.
Right.
So I either need somebody I trust on monitor saying, you got it, you're good, move on, or I need to have someone else in one of those roles, right? So for us to be able to like do all the planning and have tons of pre-pro meetings, and everyone knew exactly what they were doing, and then there was a D-Day cutoff where I just handed it off to them, and I was like, I'm just talent now. And of course, little things came up where we had to make decisions, and they would pull me aside and we would make those calls. But in general, they did such a great job of protecting me from all of the other logistical stuff, like, oh, lunch is late, oh, this person didn't get a meal, whatever, things that like I shouldn't have to worry about being the talent. They did a great job of insulating that for me, and I trusted them so much that they had it. So that was a gift too, is like having those people on set, because it is a team sport, it is a team effort that you can trust to hand things off to, and you know they're going to complete it.
So unfortunately, we're coming to an end with our time here, but I do want to sort of ask you one final question, which is a pretty broad one, but it's a super important one, especially for our listeners and viewers who are sort of starting out or finding themselves between a rock and a hard place in their career, right? But what is like one piece of advice that you wish you had starting your creative journey in this industry?
You don't need film school. I
Preach.
Bless your hearts. The people that have gone to film school, bless your hearts. You are very prepared, and on paper, you'll probably get the job over somebody else because you have book experience, but real world experience goes so much farther. And that's true of college too, right? Like we can learn all we want to learn, but it's until we're applying it to our real everyday lives and our jobs is where we're actually implementing what we're learning and actually shaping our environment of our industry, really. So yeah, I would say you don't need anything fancy. You definitely don't need to pay anybody. I know for actors starting out, they always want you to pay for, there's so many scams that are targeted towards actors, and some things that aren't scams. They're just like lessons, or I'll teach you this trick, all the online content that you can buy or subscribe to or whatever. It's going to be unsustainable to pay for all of those things, and they won't necessarily help you because they're one person's opinion in a sea of so many subjective opinions on this industry. Like it is a subjective field, right? Like two people can watch the same movie and one person can love it and one person can hate it. Like I met somebody the other day who didn't like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I was shocked. I was like, I thought that was like a new memento in the context of how it was told, the storytelling, the characters. I was like, this is a game changer. And someone else can hate it. Someone else can say that it didn't connect with them. So, I think we like to distill everything down to like box office numbers and money and things like that. But you have to really understand why you're in this industry. Like I got into this industry because I felt like I had something more to say than what other people were telling me to say. And I have a perspective that's unique, and I want to show the ideas that I think aren't being told or aren't being communicated that I'd like to see. Like there's not a lot of female friendly sci-fi out there. There's not like in our sci-fi, just it's less violent. There's drama and there's definitely some gore, but there's no guns. It's just there's opportunity for new things to be created if you don't give up. And you're always going to have other people telling you their opinions about what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. It's really, if I'm on a path and I get an opportunity to go left or right, in that moment, I have to choose what's right for me, like you did in that time when, like I did in that moment where I got an opportunity to produce. Those are the moments that define your career, not the somebody giving you feedback. Like I can tell you from experience, I've had professional feedback on so much of my work, and it's just their opinion. None of it goes anywhere. Like it takes a lot of people to approve of your work to get something funded, but it doesn't mean, it's just that matter of you never give up and you keep telling people and you keep advocating for your project or yourself or you as in this role, and you keep knocking on doors even when people tell you no. Like I'll tell you, like even from Wizdom, I always get like random people giving me feedback that I didn't ask for, and I'll take it depending on the person. But sometimes I'm also like, okay, thanks. What are you doing? So it's just take everyone's opinion with a grain of salt. And if it makes you happy, it sparks your joy, you keep doing that, because I know that other people will enjoy it if you enjoy it. That's the idea. There's other people out there like you, and the more unique and the weirder and like the more unique your point of view is, the more likely you will stick out in this sea of content.
Yeah, and I think I'll definitely echo and second your advice on skipping film school. I mean, if you are truly passionate about this stuff, you will find a way. And the greatest memory that I have at the start of my career was my mentor when I'm 17 years old, who was an accomplished playwright, screenwriter, director in his own right, telling me to not go to film school and to just get on set, and that I will learn more, work faster, and spend less money getting there. And I did go to film school, and I did spend that time getting my degree, and it was a great networking opportunity, and the friends I made there are lifelong companions. But at the end of the day, I went into debt to learn very little about how the sausage actually gets made, and learn a lot of other people's opinions outside of the actual working industry. And the second that I graduated and started PAing, I learned way more about what it takes to actually succeed as a working professional in this industry than I ever did in school. So 1,000%, just start working. Find your tribe. Go on Facebook. Find network with people who, it's always going to seem shady and sketchy. You'll have imposter syndrome at first, but put yourself out there and just start working with people, because you never know who's going to go where or who knows who. And it's just part of the wild ride that just is this industry, right? So yeah. That's awesome. Ashton, thank you so much.
I will add one thing to that is just the idea that all good teams need to keep creating new good teams, because team members grow and leave or booked. So it is to the benefit of the producer, of the production team, to invest in you, to grow you to what they need you to be part of that team. So personality first. Are you a good team player? Are you a yes-ander? Do you have a good attitude? If we're in the trenches, I want to be in the trenches with the people I'm enjoying spending my time with. So first and foremost is that, and then are you doing your job well? And I'll teach you the rest, because I need you in that role. And I know if I teach that to you, that you'll be loyal to me because I was the person who brought you in the door. So I think a lot of producers feel that way. And so it's really just buddying up to your local producer and try to, help them out and have them impart their wisdom on you.
Yeah, a great collaborator will work 10 times as much as a super skilled and talented asshole. So Ashton, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your wisdom with our audience. Tee-hee. Tell us where folks can find you online and how we can support what you're working on.
Awesome. You can find me on Instagram at Ashton Swinford, and you can check out our project at Project Wizdom, spelled Wizdom. Projectwizdom.com is our homepage for all things wisdom.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for chiming in with me. Folks, this has been Inside the Business. As always, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, share this with some folks that you like, even the ones that you hate. We'll see you next time.